podcast, Metaphysical Realm 2, and I have two other things I've been saying frequently. And one's kind of an affirmation, and that is ease and grace. Not only can we be running around in the holiday season, but we can get all wrapped up if we just can take a breath and remember ease and grace. And another thing is, you will never regret being kind. You will never regret being kind. I had a close friend who started to get divorced in March, and she called me, and I said, I'll call her Kathy. I said, Kathy, ease and grace, and remember, you will never regret being kind. So be as kind as you can through this process. And she just texted me in the last week and said that's the best advice she got for getting through the process. And she's through the process already. Hallelujah, right? Yeah. So this is really an informal conversation. I'm using a stool, not to be above you, but so I can see you, okay? So let us just create a pause between the service and the lovely food we just had. Just check on your heart, mind, and whatever state you find it in, just open it a little bit more than it was a moment ago. And let us feel gratitude for today, for the service we just enjoyed, the food that we're using to feed our bodies, and this workshop, our relationships, our interactions, that the intention is that it feeds our souls. And so it is. Amen. Well, here we are. We're going to have, I like to think of it as kind of a conversation. Some ministers call this the questions I've been wanting to ask, but have been afraid to ask my minister. And sometimes it's easier to ask me because I'm kind of a hit and run case. I hit and run to the car. And I want to say one more thing. Oh, probably way more than that. But what I want you to know is that in the spirit of the tradition I call unity, I don't care what you believe, but I do care about you. And isn't that the important thing? What you believe is up to you. I can help you maybe, guide you, misdirect you, I don't know. But yeah, I'm here to simply be in support. So does anybody have a comment or a question? And it can be anything. Yes, thank you.
I've been reading Neville Goddard lately
Mm-hmm.
and listening to his videos on YouTube. So I was raised to believe that God was a physical human being in the sky with a gray beard.
Anybody else raised that way? You're in good company.
And that's just where I came from.
Yeah.
And then I kind of evolved in going to different churches. Like I went to Unity at home in Kansas City. I went to Center for Spiritual Living
In Kansas City?
in Kansas City.
Okay.
And anyway, when I started reading Neville Goddard's book, the characters in the Bible, like, Joseph, Mary, they are a part of our mind instead of a physical human being.
Yes.
So that just kind of like, wow.
Wow. Yeah, that's whacked, right, at first. Yeah.
But what are your thoughts about that?
Yes, so the New Thought tradition, of which Centers for Spiritual Living, Unity, Divine Science, and for me, even Christian Science, have a tradition of looking at the Bible metaphysically, which means trying to discern an understanding beyond the literal words. And so, as part of that tradition, every person, every place has an interpretation, and those people and those places represent some aspect of our own consciousness. So Mary represents something, Joseph represents something, King Herod represents something. So all of them represent something in us, so that when we read a story in the Bible, I always like to think the first reading is the literal words, and then I begin to look at that through a metaphysical lens. And there's a couple tools you can use in Unity. There's something called the Metaphysical Bible Dictionary. The Metaphysical Bible Dictionary, and in there, every proper name, every proper place is listed, and it says what it means metaphysically. So that's kind of the tool we use. And to a lesser extent, something called the Revealing Word is kind of a classic Unity book that can help in those terms. To put it, I hope, more in plain English, when we metaphysically interpret the Bible, I can then, within me, create an intersection between the story, the places, and the characters, and where my current consciousness is, which means then I can be more aware of the state of my consciousness. Okay? You're welcome. You're welcome. Yes.
Paul, would you say that, I guess my thinking about reading the Bible and finding out the meanings that it means to me seemed to be almost like studying poetry when I was in college, finding out the metaphors for things. And to me it seems like the meanings of these, the metaphysical meanings of these people and the stories and the places, you almost have to find out what that means to you, even more than reading the books and finding out, okay, Bethlehem means bread or whatever.
Yep.
You know, it almost seems like that those are helpful tools, but until you can internalize what it means to you personally, they don't really carry much weight.
Yes, so the goal is to get to the point where that story has meaning for me, and it has with you. And so the Metaphysical Bible Dictionary, the Revealing Word, are things to help us get there. Much like there are books written about the symbology in our dreams. And so we have our dreams, we can read about the symbology, but that doesn't mean that that symbology works for you, but it's a starting place. And so you and I could have a similar dream, and we'll have a different interpretation. The same is true of the Bible. And sometimes people miss the point that Charles Fillmore's interpretation of those stories are his interpretation, not necessarily yours or mine. So I think of it more akin to a dream interpretation. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I was wondering if you could maybe expound a little bit on the idea of God being all good. Because that's something I kind of have, always said, oh yeah, who says?
Yeah. Oh, we could be brothers. Yeah, because most of us, when we hear the word good, at the same time we hear the word bad, don't we? Okay, and so when we say God is good, most of us hear it, maybe not you, many of us hear it as God's good like a Boy Scout or a Girl Scout. Have you heard it that way? Kind of? Yeah. Well, that's not it at all. And I didn't really have an understanding of that until I discovered a definition in the Revealing Word. And that definition is what I use to set me free from that. I don't think we should ever say God is good because people misunderstand it. People hear it wrong. So in the Revealing Word, at the very beginning, you'll see a reference that's called all, capital A-L-L, dash good, capital G-O-O-D. And it says something like, by that we mean divine mind, we mean God, we mean the principle of benevolence, which permeates the universe. So for me, God the good means God is the principle of benevolence. And benevolence is used by you and me. Just like the 12 powers, benevolence is one of the principles that we decide how we use it. It simply is. And that gets me around that the trouble that saying God the good gets us in. So if you can think of the principle of benevolence and the entirety of that principle is present at the point of you, then in those moments, if we are not feeling particularly benevolent and we want to, we can remember that and then consciously use it. And I actually use benevolence and generosity together, pretty much. That's another principle, the principle of generosity. And I didn't have any to bring with me. I wrote a book that I published like 4 years ago called Use the Truth You Know, Unity's Principles and Premises. And in there, I list them like almost like a dictionary, all the principles I could find in all the Unity writings. Now, you may be thinking, how did you do that? So one of the advantages we have of living in this era is we have every one of the published Unity texts in digital format. So I have a file that has every book, and in my multitude of trips I was making as dean across the country, that's what I would do on the plane. I looked at every last instance of the word principle in all the books. One, so I could get a bigger sense of what the word principle means, and then what are the individual principles. And that book is not the end all. What the Charles and Myrtle Fillmore did, that's not the end. We get to discern. And so I just mentioned the principle of generosity. That's not in the books anywhere. Charles and Myrtle talk about giving, but they don't talk about the principle that giving is based upon. So I added the principle of generosity into that book. There's also not a principle for humor. Isn't that funny, right? Yeah. So I had to come up with a word that I think all humor is based upon, and right now, it's not coming to mind.
That must be humor.
Yeah, it'll pull back into the station, then I'll tell. then they'll tell you. It's a word that sounds funny, so it's like perfect. Yes, Barb. Oh, thank you.
I've sort of evolved from using God into using energy or divine mind or whatever, all those things. And so I still have little twinges when the word God is used.
Yeah. Okay, so the word is jocularity. It did pull back into the station. So if a person has reactivity to a word, when I have reactivity to a word, that's a signal to me that there's something I could work on there. And I may not be willing to work on it right now, okay? So, and it's kind of like, sometimes we talk about those things as being like we have an allergy to the word God. And so you get to look at it, and you get to decide if you want to do something about it. I've had an allergy to the word Christ for the last couple years. And mostly it has to do with all the various definitions. And I wonder if that's true for you, Bob. Oh, okay.
We use God fairly often here. And I have to get my caboose too.
That train will pull back into the station. I know. Yeah. Some of us we talk about wounds from the tradition we were raised in. And lots of time it's related to a specific word or a series of words. Good.
Sometimes when I read the Daily Word, or even do that here, I'll rewrite it.
Yeah, so that's what I do, and you probably know, I rewrite the Sunday messages every week and publish it. If anyone is interested in that, it's called The Absolute Word, and Unity has given me permission to do that, but only for the Sunday version. And so you can email me at alberthasselbeck@gmail.com and ask for it, and you'll be put on my mailing list. And maybe this group will put me to the 600 mark. My human would like to see that happen. Yeah, so, and you might imagine when I travel the country, I don't know what I'm going to experience in any particular church. And I have learned to be present with whatever is in that case. And the word God, so, I can't think of these guys' names. There are a couple researchers, they're scientists, and they did research on the word God. And what they did was they asked people in various congregations individually, what do you mean when you say God? And what they found out was, this is the big takeaway for me, is that even within the same congregation, only 10% of the people will have a similar definition. 90% will mean something else. And so that word God, I chafed against it for a while because of all these different definitions, because when I say the word God, maybe 10% of you are holding the same belief I am, but the rest aren't, so I've lost the rest. So I've been moving along. Right now, the word I use is the divine or my divinity, for whatever that is. Yes, sir. Exercise.
Yeah, one thing that I have a question about, I guess, is you see a lot of contemporary spiritual writers who talk about the universe. You know, like there's a book called The Universe Has Your Back.
Yeah.
I just kind of like to get your take on that. I mean, is that a valid thing?
Yes, so certainly in the last decade or so, the universe has become a somewhat popular synonym for God or replacement for the word God. So the first level of that is each person has a right to the definition that works for them. That's my first thing. The second thing is I don't notice the universe has my back. Sometimes it feels like there's a knife in my back. So I think the universe simply is, if we're using it in the term as a replacement term. And it simply is. And for me, it has no agency. It doesn't do anything for us or against us. So in a sense, when I think of the word universe as a replacement for the word God, it's neutral. I mean, so I'm just going to take this another step further, and maybe I'll open a can of worms, I don't know. I can't possibly believe in a concept of God, whether it's universe, God, spirit, or whatever, that is a something that helps us and directs us and guides us and protects us. When people in a basement, in a church, in a prayer group is shot up by a young man. How could I believe that there's a protecting God when that kind of stuff is happening? Okay, but what I know is I can use my divinity to protect myself and protect others. That I can do. Oh,
So then, why do we pray?
why do we pray? Well, that only took 20 minutes to get to. So I pray as a means to synchronize my humanity with my divinity and to claim principles and laws which are everywhere present in their totality. So if I'm praying with you, I don't believe in praying for people. If I'm praying with you for health and wholeness, I know the principles of life, health, wholeness, and a bunch of others are right there at the point of view. So when I pray with you, and because those principles are no different in you than in me, I'm activating them in me and you. And then if you have if you're desiring to return to health and wholeness, that prayer will help support you in that process. I'm not praying for some outside God to fix you or to heal you or any of that. Because that doesn't work sometimes either, does it? See, the beliefs we've formulated around God gives God a break no matter what's happening. So if you're praying for someone for health and wholeness and they die, they'll say, well, that was God's will. God was calling them home. And that gives God a break. That gives God an out.
I guess the reason I'm just tripping up, my belief is that I come here with a path.
Okay.
And stuff's going to happen on that path.
Yeah.
And prayer is not going to change some of that stuff. but I guess I had the feeling that prayer would help. I can still ask for help and guidance even though it might not change the outcome. But I get what you're saying, is that we're just, you pray to activate.
Yes, you're praying to
The I am-
activate
the
all.
I am within
Yes,
you.
that's exactly
it.
it. Yes. Please do pray. Okay? Please do pray because there's efficacy there. But it's not happening in the way I was raised. That there's some man in the sky who sometimes answers my prayers, sometimes. What was that? Sometimes God says yes, sometimes God says no, sometimes God says go slow, right? But doesn't that give God an out for whatever? Yes, sir. And then, did you have a question or were you just, okay.
I have a question. I look at words like a linguist, and meaning means something concrete and something that you can define. And when you talk about a church where the majority of the people have different meanings for a word, I'm reminded of the Tower of Babel, because we're sitting here talking, and all of us have different meanings in our brains for words.
Yep.
And yet we're attempting to come some sort of agreement.
Yep.
Theologians and philosophers of religion talk about things like what you were just asking. How do you explain bad things happening to good people? And there really isn't a good explanation for it, but there is a rationalization. Every denomination has a way of answering that.
Yes. And what about good things happening to bad people?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, so a conversation like we're having here today, I am expressing what I believe, so that's IMO. All of this is in my opinion, okay? You get to have your own opinion, and I'm explaining it in language I understand. And if something I say you're having a reaction in, it might be because we're having different definitions of words. And I can't work with that unless someone brings it up. Yes?
Back to prayer.
Okay.
I've always had like difficulty. I think I have this thing in my mind that there's a right way and a wrong way to pray.
Yep.
And I, have struggled with that.
Yeah.
I've come to a place where I have a conversation with God, like I'm talking to you, like
Yep.
I'm talking to a friend. I tell God about my day.
Yep.
And I ask God for, let me hear your voice.
Yep.
And I pray for things like that.
Yeah.
I pray for guidance and understanding and, give me the grace and, just, things like that. And, like I said, I still struggle with, there's a right way and a wrong way, and am I doing it right?
Nope.
But
There-
I'm doing right now I'm doing what works for me.
Yes. And I would encourage that. And I would applaud that far over the decision not to pray at all. And maybe this little tidbit from Charles Fillmore would help. So Charles Fillmore said, desire is a form of prayer. Desire is a form of prayer. And as far as talking to God, if that works for you, hallelujah. So how many of you talk to yourself? Okay, right? And how many of you, when you talk to yourself, actually believe there's another self? Okay, so we're in a unity group, so that passes. So I talk to myself, and that helps me clarify some things for me, and I don't believe there's another self right here or another one here. So when I talk, I'm going to use your language, to God, I'm talking to the divinity within me, that I absolutely know it cannot respond by the definition I have for it. But that doesn't matter, because it's what's happening in me that's important. And that's what I would encourage with you. Now, when we do prayer classes, yeah, we got 5-step prayer process. We say, we pray with people, not for people. There's all kinds of things we say. And they all have an importance. And none of that supersedes the importance of what works for you. None of it. What works for you is what works for you. And that's your experience, and I encourage that. So we have here, I think I saw before him, so can we? I know that seems a little crazy, but.
Okay, so I work with the 12 powers plus powers, all these other ones. But there seem to be these negative powers that kind of haunt me, fear, doubt, and worry.
Yep.
And I really have to work hard to push them away, and
Okay.
with wisdom and understanding and strength and all of that. So, why do we have that fear, doubt, and worry? Why do I have that fear, doubt, and worry that I have to work so hard to get rid of?
Yeah. How many are just thinking amen to that? Right? So at one point I was working on a list of the anti-powers. So I had like the gift of alienation on the list, right? And stuff like that. Because it's fun, and fun helps us understand things at a deeper level. Okay, so it was in the middle of the pandemic. I was actually speaking for Unity of Dallas live, so there was nobody around. As I prepared that lesson, it was centered around fear, and I have a background in A Course in Miracles. Any of you have a background in Course in Miracles here? Yeah. So I went to my favorite passage there, and I had one of those, moments. And what I realized is this: fear is evidence of love's presence. Fear is not the absence of love or the opposite of love. When I'm fearful, I know love is present. So, Paul, what in the world do you mean by that, right? So I looked at my life, and I noticed that when I'm fearful, it's because something I have the perception something I love is threatened. It could be my house, it could be my car, it could be me and my body, it could be a neighbor, it can be a relative, it could be a friend. So what I was noticing there is that if there wasn't love, I wouldn't be fearful. So as soon as I started recognizing that, I created a spiritual practice out of that. And that is, every time I'm fearful, the next question I ask is, what is it I am loving right now? Because that fear could not be present without the love. And actually the other one, it was doubt and what? Fear? Yeah. So doubt and worry are all expressions of fear, actually. And my guess is you have the fear, you have the doubt, you have the worry as a way to protect yourself so that you won't be harmed. And so now, maybe when you sense doubt, worry, or fear, you can look at what is it you're loving. My mother had a PhD, an advanced degree in worry, right? And never once, well, I can't say this for sure, but most of what she worried about never came to pass. Yeah, and so I could never talk her out of it. And then I said, well, That's how she's expressing her love. And I stopped wanting to change her. So, any response to that? Any questions to that? Okay, and we don't want to forget the gentleman in the back, okay?
So what happens then? How do you, does knowing that dissipate your fear at all?
Yeah, it brings my fear level way down. And I no longer see fear as an enemy,
Okay, yeah.
okay? And so when it's present, it's a friend. It's an alert to something.
So, but I can imagine myself maybe, when I'm fearful, saying that, well, what do I love? Well, I better not love it anymore because it's making me fearful.
Oh, wow. That's brilliant.
Well, no, it's sad.
No. Oh, my water's gone. Okay. If someone get me water, I appreciate it. Yeah, so that's an easy place for a person to go. And the place I invite you to go is to embrace the love that you identify. Yeah, the fear's here. The fear is reminding me I love my partner. The fear is reminding me I love my car. I love my home. So what that does in me, it helps me amp up my awareness of love's presence, because it's there. It's my awareness that has shifted. So it's something I invite you to try and see what happens. I mean, how many of you are going to say, oh, well, I'm worried and afraid that my child is going to hurt themselves? Thank you so much. Stop loving your child? No. Are you going to get rid of your car? No. Are you going to get rid of your house? No. And what I'm trying to emphasize here is what's usually taught is something like fear is the opposite of love, or something like that. Oh, you are so helpful. Thank you. Okay? Okay, we can come back if you have to. Finally, Sarah, thank you for being patient.
Yeah, I had a question, maybe even a bigger perspective. So we're physical entities, here on planet Earth, and we have a soul level, we have a spiritual level. Mm-hmm. That's the dichotomy, and harmonize and balance them. So in a fourth dimension, fifth dimensional, higher vibrational level, what's your thoughts about, many people that have NDEs?
Mm-hmm. That's near-death experiences, NDEs.
And they're documented. Many people have amazing stories, occurrences, understandings, and then also channelers. There's so many people that are spiritually blessed, and to me, they're phenomenal stories and information that's channeled through human beings that gives us just amazing insight, I think, to more than what we are in a physical realm here.
Yep.
So that's inspiring to me a lot, and it gives me a higher perspective. So I was just curious about cosmic level, bigger picture, what your understanding might be some of that, Paul.
Okay, so everybody's entitled to their own experience, and I'm never going to say if someone had an experience of something you didn't have it, because that's just rude and not kind. So if someone says they have an experience of channeling, or they have a near-death experience, any of those things seem to be happening. I've never had one. People see angels. I've never seen an angel. That doesn't mean angels don't exist. So that's the first level of it. Another level of it for me is this. Just because somebody has channeled an entity doesn't mean that entity is wiser than you. You hear that? Okay? Because sometimes people are weak-willed and they go willy-nilly off in a direction because they're not using their own faculty of discernment. And so whatever you hear or read from material that's channeled, first of all, I believe that information is for that person, okay? And whatever use I get out of it is my use. But that doesn't mean it's right for me, and so it's up to me to evaluate that, okay? And I can't think of how to say this. So you said, and there is an assumption that when somebody channels, that they're blessed. Well, Helen Schuckman was an atheist, and she started channeling. So was she of higher understanding or more spiritual than you and me? No. So just use your innate discernment to figure out what's right for you. Did you have a follow-up to that?
Well, I just really believe the human experience is very, very short term. And, on a soul level, and we're in linear time, linear space, and I just, me personally, I take it in a much, much higher perspective of what do I get to do with my bit of time out here. And at a soul level, I have to figure out, what's the best use of that time.
Yeah. So isn't that the bottom line?
Yeah.
So we have a certain number of days here. We don't know what they are. I was told when I was 37 years I'd be dead in 2 years. Okay? And I had a recent incident, a medical incident, where I could have died. Okay? I'm still here. I'm still tweaking people as I go. Okay? But the bottom line, so let me back up a little bit, a little more history. So when I was younger, I studied channeling. I studied how to do past life regressions. I studied astrology, and back in those days, you had to do the calculations by hand. Okay, back in the dark ages. Yeah, I actually learned how to read tarot cards and actually co-wrote a book with my friend who was a professional tarot card reader. That never got published, but here's what I learned, hear this, for myself. The degree to which I was focused on astrology or tarot cards or past life regressions, to that degree, I was using energy that I could have been using right here, right now, to be the best person I could be. So for me, I learned it was a distraction. So people ask me, what happens after life? I have an answer. Are you surprised? I don't know. And even more so, this is not meant to be insulting, I don't care. I will have it all sorted out when I die. Or not. Right? So how can I be the best I can be right here and now? And how can I make that the focus of my attention? And so that, excuse me?
Being of service.
Being of service is certainly a good start. Yeah. Okay, there was one here and then behind. I don't know your name.
Jean.
Hi, Jean.
Hi. Two things. I have a funny story about psychic stuff. I was in a circle and I called my grandmother, my Norwegian grandmother up, and she said, "I've done my time, what do you want?" And I was like, oh, okay. Well, anyway, I was talking to my cousin recently who spent a lot of time with this woman when she was young. And my grandma was always very sweet to me, but I guess she was pretty much hell on wheels. So my cousin said, "That sounds just like her." I was like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
well, I got the right person anyway. So it's not a question.
It's a good thing she wasn't speaking in Norwegian, because none of
Right,
you
right,
would have
then I
known,
would have
right?
understood. Yeah, I
Yeah.
would say, oh, the mother tongue. Anyway, so I have a dear, dear sister who's a fundamentalist Christian, and I'm going to hell because of my chosen lifestyle.
Yeah.
And for decades, we've been discussing things, and I'm open and kind, and sometimes we argue, and she's worried about my soul, and I say, my soul is not your business. My soul is my business. And we go round and round and round. And anyway, do you have anything to say about that?
So first of all, if you scratch me, you get an opinion. My only response to that, the next time it comes up, just thank her and leave it there. Just thank her and leave it there. She believes she's helping you, okay? And can we focus on that? Instead of, listen, think simple, folks. Simple is good. Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Yes.
Yeah, I guess I'm trying to collect some of my thoughts because I think I'm still back there with God. But I think when I think about my divinity, my own divinity, I think of it as part of a larger divinity, larger consciousness. And in that respect, that may give me a little more feeling of mystery is still out there as far as the holy.
Yeah.
The holy happens in moments. But I also think that I come from a tradition where there's so much focus on service and justice, and so I pop over to unity to get more of the metaphysical.
Okay.
But I wonder about this idea of collective consciousness and evolvement where, you know, the awareness of what's happening in the world and our response to it can improve. I mean, isn't that part of our reason for being on Earth is to, you know, build a world community or become better at being together in the world? So, is there a question there?
I don't know. There was you said a lot of important things. And
So I would love to be a part of a tradition where we're metaphysical in our humanity and, you know, focusing on also how to make the world better, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I will say this, unity in its own way is doing that. And unity has been more outward directed in the last 20 years than it was the first 10 years I was with Unity. It was like we were all meditating on our belly buttons, and it's like the rest of the world didn't matter. But I think Unity has opened up to that more. The example here, Barb showed me the no, I'm thinking of the oh my gosh. The pantry, the food pantry. Oh, that's, okay, so I didn't know what it was called. All right. So, so this community, in a way, is doing that. It's maybe small, but it's not small to one person who picks up food supplies that he or she needs. And we I don't think anybody in Unity keeps anybody from doing things. In the church, I was the minister of prayer. Let's just leave it at that. We had whole teams that helped build homes for people. So that's an individual decision, though, because I don't like it when someone appears to be encouraging me to feel guilty because I'm not doing enough. What's enough for you and what's enough for me and what's for you is an individual decision. So I'm glad you found a community that does more outreach, and maybe if you were involved in this community more, you might. It's your idea. You might be the one who brings more of that to this church community. Yes?
Well, I think one thing I'm getting at, and I discovered not too long ago that a grandfather I didn't know was Christian Scientist among a lot of Lutherans.
Yeah?
But part of the early New Thought movement. But I guess when I think of New Thought, there's this hope and idea of greater consciousness. New Age, I guess, is part of that. And
Yeah.
I'm wondering, is that still relevant? Making, that we just become better, more conscious, and the world becomes better.
So I think there is a trajectory for this greater consciousness you're talking about, that its movement is towards expansion and evolution, and that also means there's things that must die off or go away, and it may even look like consciousness is going backwards. So I think of it as like a stock market chart that's going like this, okay? But the trajectory is sure, but sometimes it's going to feel and look like it's going backwards. And as far as, so my understanding is distinct from yours. It doesn't mean mine's right and yours wrong. I think this, whatever it is we call the divine, is everywhere present totally. In other words, there's not pieces we add up that get to totality. Is that the divine at the point of view is identical to the divine at the point of me, so we're identical in our divinity, and we're wondrously distinct in our humanity. Because in our humanity, we're expressing our divinity in unique and wonderful ways, and sometimes we're using our divinity in negative ways. That's how evil and negativity comes about, because we're using it in negative ways. I don't believe this thing called collective consciousness is the divine, because for me, my definition includes the divine doesn't change. Consciousness changes. And I absolutely, so here's where I am now. And this has been evolving, and who knows, this may go in the opposite direction, but I believe there is one consciousness. I am using that consciousness to have the consciousness called Paul. You're using it to be Barb. And that consciousness, like the divine, is everywhere present in its totality. And cats use it in cat ways. Dogs use it in dog ways. Bumblebees use it in bumblebees ways. And elm trees use it in elm tree ways. And I see the expansion and evolution of consciousness reflected in the evolution of life on our planet. And what makes me different from a cat is I'm a human, it's a cat. And the grass has a different level of using that same consciousness. And that's what makes us distinct. Any response? Okay. That may be so whacked out that we're not ready for that. But I'm going to tell you exactly where I am, and sometimes I have to say, you're welcome or I'm sorry, based on what I've said. Okay?
I think you just answered the question of what happens when we die.
I don't know.
We're consciousness.
So,
It doesn't go away.
yeah, consciousness doesn't, yes, so, I don't know if what the gentleman called soul is synonym for consciousness. I don't know what happens. And I don't care. I mean,
Sorry, it's just, it's a personal interest of mine. I belong to a International Association of Near-Death Studies. If anybody's interested, there's a whole science out there on
Oh,
this.
yeah.
People
And-
spend their careers researching this, so.
and
anyway,
lots of
just
evidence.
a plug.
Yeah, yeah. There's lots of evidence and there's hard science that somehow we go on. That still doesn't relieve me of my responsibility to be present and be the best me I can be. Yeah.
And I understand what you said before and respect that about, do you want to use your time here on earth to think about those things? But for some folks, it's very, it helps them to live their life better and gives them less fear to think about things like that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm saying it turned out not to be right for me. But that was after I knew a lot.
Right. Yeah,
Right?
you were really deep into it. That's
Yeah,
very
I
interesting.
was really deep into it, yeah. Anybody else? Yes, sir. We got to get the mic to you. Looks like your name is Claude. Yes?
I was just wondering, I started going to Unity long before this building was built. But anyway, we had a Reverend, Dick Andrews, was a great guy, and he left, and he went to Vegas, where he don't talk about it. But anyway, and now we got Deborah, and she's leaving, and I'm just wondering where we're going. Sometimes I get the feeling, well, just suck it up and get over it.
Yeah.
But
So first of all,
where do we go from here?
okay, so first of all, was this building built to be Unity Center of Cedar Rapids?
Yes.
So first of all, that's cool, because this is, so I thought you retrofitted a building, and it's amazing. And I see a lot of Unity churches. This is really a beautiful and useful facility you have. Where you go as a congregation is decided by the congregation. That you get to decide your trajectory. You get to decide who you hire and who you fire. And that is both a strength and a weakness in some ways. It's a strength in that you don't have some regional organization or national organization telling you what to do and when to do it and how to do it. They're there simply to support this congregation when this congregation asks. That's very important and very cool. So from the individual to the top, in a sense, every piece is independent and can decide for themselves. And so just as you all are deciding to be here, this church was a decision in somewhere or the other. And ministers come and go. Congregants come and go. And in a way, this organization has its own consciousness. That's a result of its membership. And you get to decide where you go from here. And you've had some pretty spectacular ministers, at least as far back as I remember, the minister before Brenda, who had a stroke, what was her name? Velma was wonderful. Thelma? Thelma. Yeah, and then Brenda's a wonderful human being, and Deborah's a human being, a wonderful human being, and I don't know if there was someone in between there, but. The board. The board, okay. Okay, and now the board is being called to do that again, and you'll do it, and you step up, because you love your community. That's what I say. I don't teach tithing. I teach generosity and benevolence, okay? And so this is here because people before you, people now, and people after you will give generously. So just for a minute, wherever you are, just touch something that's here, okay? That's here because someone chose to give. Otherwise, it wouldn't be here. Isn't that amazing? When I worked at Unity Village for 18 years, and there wasn't a single day that went by when I stepped on that campus, I was not in awe that every blade of grass, every brick, every employee was there, mostly because someone decided to give generously. And I like to say give without any concern about whether you're going to get something in return. So I don't know if that answered your question, but my sense is this is going to go on. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, it will go on. Anybody else? Yes, sir. Wait for the microphone, please. You had that look on your face, like, should I ask? Or,
Well, I was just wondering if you ever use a metaphysical lens when, observing popular culture or literature or anything like that. Is that helpful to you? And what do you?
I would say rarely do I do that. However, I live from a metaphysical perception. But it's rarely I sit down and go, now what does that mean metaphysically? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So we're in December, and we have all this holiday stuff. We have beautiful music today, there's a lot of Christian and Christ and Jesus and
Yeah.
all of that. And then we go through the same thing at Easter. From a metaphysical perspective, how do you take these stories and apply them or use them? How do you celebrate Christmas, or do you celebrate Christmas, or is it Christmas every day for you?
Well, you gave me all the options, all the doors I can walk through, and so for Unity, this is the schizophrenic time of the year. So on one side, we have members who don't believe in Jesus or the Christmas story or any of that. On the other hand, we have people that are like hanging on to that. Okay, so we have both going on year round, but at Christmas, the Jesus side of the story gets to be the star, and at Easter, it gets to be the star. And each person has to interface with that in the way that best works for them, okay? And I'm not going to dodge the question, because you did ask, what about me? So I learned very quickly whenever I'm visiting a church to just be in the atmosphere of the church that I'm with, because I'm a guest. When I was the minister of record for Unity of Wichita, I had to go through Easter season and Christmas season, and how do we do that? So there I cut a path that was more that leaned very metaphysical and not much on the literal story. And even with all of that, there still had to be the Christmas music and the Easter music. And believe me, if you tried to take either of those away from a church, I would have been shown the door. Okay, just like if you try to get rid of the prayer for protection or the daily word. I mean, we say we have no dogma, but boy, we sure have some doctrine, and that would be right there with it, right? So, for me, okay, for the record, in the last 5 years, I made the decision to say I'm not Christian. And the reason for that is the majority of what I understand Unity believes is not Christian. Sometimes we talk about it arising out of a metaphysical interpretation of the Bible and all of that, and we say Unity follows Jesus, and we do, but a lot of our teachings don't come from the Bible and didn't come from Jesus. So what do? Well, I cannot with authenticity say I'm Christian when I don't believe what Christendom believes. And yeah, I can say I have a different definition of Christ than all of Christianity, but that's like the tail wagging the dog, you know? So I just chose to come out of the closet, in a sense, because I've been thinking about it for probably a decade, is say, okay, the truth is I'm not Christian. I don't have a label for myself except to say I'm a metaphysical philosopher. And I should say I'm an untrained metaphysical philosopher because I don't have a degree in philosophy or any of that. And in fact, I had a couple ask for a Zoom meeting with me they were looking for a minister and for their wedding. And in the course of the conversation, I found out that these two people were very Christian. And I had to share with them, look, why aren't you going to your own minister to do this? And it was for secular reasons they weren't going to their own minister, because their minister wanted them to take classes in marital relations and all of that. And they needed to be married before January 31st for tax purposes. Okay, right? So I said, look, what you have to know is I am not Christian. And if that doesn't work for you, I hope you find someone that will work for you. I don't know. They said they might call me back. That usually means they're not going to call me back. Yep. And the clock's ticking, right? For January 31st, right? It's ticking. Yep. So it's like we have these beliefs, but we're willing to suspend them to save money somehow or whatever. You go, okay. So I'm not Christian, okay? Do I believe in Jesus? I don't know if Jesus literally existed or not. If he's made up, it's a good story, and I've learned a lot from that story. And what the writers of the Bible, what they said Jesus said, it wouldn't make any difference if they said Mickey Mouse said those things. What's important is, what are the value of what was said? That's important to me. And again, it's me bringing my own discernment, my own wisdom, my own consciousness to what was written. Yes?
Great answer. That's a really great answer. How do you, in the news today, you know, like Gaza and Israel and Ukraine and everything, AI and the electric grid might go down and all this horrible stuff that could happen.
And a derecho may happen again.
And a derecho could come tomorrow. How do you face that and stay optimistic?
So the way I face those things is no different than I face the trials and tribulations of my own life. my foundation is prayer and meditation to consciously synchronize my humanity with my divinity, and then to live each moment from the highest perspective of which I'm capable at that moment. Okay? So I hold all of those things in my heart and my mind for resolution. And since that in the Middle East has been happening, I don't know how far it goes back. I don't know if there's a solution or not. But it's the people there who have to make up the solution, not me. Okay, and what's happening in Ukraine? I can hold them in prayer. I can support what's happening there. And it's still up to them and whatever degree other countries support the Ukraine. Stuff happens. I think we started with that, didn't we? The stuff of life happens, and humans do horrible things to other humans. Usually it boils down to property or money or something. Yeah. Did I answer that question?
So what I think I'm hearing you say is that you hold on to your center.
Yes. I hold on to my center.
Yeah, and that, it's that same fear-love thing. It's not that you say, I can't do anything about it, so I'm going to ignore it, or I don't
Yeah.
care.
Yeah.
Because if I look at it, it makes me feel terrible. But it's
Yeah.
that same, it makes you feel terrible because you love people.
Yeah.
Because we love people and we don't want to see people suffer.
Yeah.
So for me, what you said today is really helpful for me to remember. Don't just turn off.
Yeah.
Because then you won't be able to feel anything.
Yeah.
And do what you can, but do what you can from a place of centeredness.
Yeah. And in my piece of the world, like
Yes.
the other woman was
Where we
saying,
are.
what am I doing for the world around me? Yes, yes. And for me, I don't believe in turning off the news. And sometimes I do. Sometimes I go, you know what? I've heard that particular story enough. I don't have to hear it anymore. I mean, you all know how the news cycle is. I mean, things get repeated and repeated and repeated. And things that people do to each other repeat and repeat and repeat. So how do I keep my center? And there is a scientist. His last name is Huberman. His last name is coming as a blank, but he has Huberman Labs, which is part of Stanford University in California. He has a wonderful podcast called Huberman Labs, and his passion is to bring science and what science has discovered to individuals for ways in which to take care of ourselves that have zero cost. And so you might find listening to him helpful. I have. His lab and other labs are researching meditation, and they've discovered even 3 minutes of meditation is helpful. 10 minutes is great, and you really don't need to do more than that. And taking a break from meditation isn't going to hurt you if you feel like you need to take a break. I'm actually been on a meditation sabbatical for about the last month. And I know my inner knower will inform me when it's time to start meditating again. I'm not in any fear that because I stopped meditating, I'm no longer synchronized with my divinity. I don't know. Yeah.
Is that Huber?
Huberman, Huberman. I think his first name's Andrew. It's a wonderful podcast, but some of the podcasts are impossibly long. Yeah, yeah. Anybody else? Yes, sir. And then here.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sort of a follow-up comment on, the conversation about Jesus. For me, I consider myself a follower of Jesus. And, I don't see any necessary conflict between, following Jesus and being a metaphysical Christian. Is that,
Well, so there's a groundswell, kind of, sort of, in the unity movement to call ourselves metaphysical Christians, and there's kickback about that, and there's people that are happy about that. We're humans. this stuff happens. That works for you. So I may not agree with you, but I will fight for you and anybody else to have their own opinion, their own belief system. Would I like it if everyone believed like I did? Oh, yeah. This job would be a lot easier. In fact, I probably wouldn't have to do any more speaking because everyone believed like me, right? Yeah, yeah. But I've made it, I mean, my Huberman Lab, thank you for ever put that up there. Thank you, yeah, yeah. I call him Dr. Hottie. It starts with an H, right? Yeah. Okay, someone else was, yes, ma'am.
I think I did. And I don't know if this is a metaphysical question or not.
Look
but
at, wait, let's pause.
Okay.
I started out with this saying, any question is fair game. That's my personal life. We've had questions about what's happening. It's all open territory to me.
So I'm relatively new to Unity and always struggle with trying to describe it to somebody who's unfamiliar with it.
Yep.
And so I had one friend who had the reaction of, oh, that's one of those prosperity religions, and was just very dismissive of it. And I was a little surprised to hear that because it didn't really fit with what I didn't see Unity as what I thought a prosperity religion was.
Yep.
And I'm just curious what your reaction is to that.
Yeah, so some people see it that way. There are some Christians who don't believe in it's called the prosperity gospel that's found in it, and there's not even a gospel about it, there's just teachings about it. So people will find ways to divide the world in any way they like. Okay, so I think it's important that everyone formulate their own little elevator speech. That's 1 or 2 sentences if someone asks you what unity is. And for me, unity is a spiritual teaching that I have used to be a better person. Period. Unity is a spiritual teaching that I use to be a better person. Then they have to have more questions, that's fine. Okay? And if they ask me, do I believe in Jesus? You already heard my answer. I'll go one step further just to stir the pot. Of course. Based on the results, I think human beings use the Bible for more harm than good. Yeah. And if I could get the Bible out of unity, I would try, but it would never happen. I mean, so the big thing when I came into unity was the Bible's our primary textbook, but try to find a Bible in a unity church. And if you find it when you open it, it's going to be full of dust, right? You go, let me see what that says. And again, this is all personal opinion. Oh, there's There's my podcast. I do it with the Reverend Doctors Bill and Cher Holton. That's why it's called Metaphysical Romp 2. I did it solo, and it was an hour from 2007 to 2014. And then I asked them to join me, and we've been doing that. And some of those podcasts have been lost because Unity stopped having their radio channel. Yeah. Yes, ma'am. And we need to run the mic back. Here we go. No, live stream.
I was just wondering if you have any suggestions of what we might do that other centers maybe don't do to find someone who is a good fit, to have someone be interested in us and come here and be our minister.
Okay. So when I was hired to be the pulpit minister at Unity of Wichita, because they were in their process of finding a minister, and one of the things I did was I advised them on the process, is when I read their materials, they were not presenting their community very well. So I suggest you have somebody professionally write how wonderful Cedar Rapids is. Because when I went to Wichita, I thought it was the armpit of Kansas, honestly, okay? Armpits are necessary, but not in a city, right? But once I was there enough and experienced some of the people there and the resources that were there and the music, this is a wonderful place. And I said, when I read your brochure, you're not promoting yourself. So that would be the important thing, because people are going to be looking at this community of what is it going to be like for me to live here.
So you're talking about the whole community?
Yes, yes. Yeah, so I'm not talking politics here. But I am talking, so why is this a wonderful place to live? Why do you love Cedar Rapids? Why did you move here if you're not from here? All of those things. Let them know how wonderful this is. It could be, some of these could be, the cost of living is wonderful here compared to elsewhere. I will say, of my own experience of being here, not just here, people in Iowa are very warm and friendly. Yeah, that's my experience of people here. And that's when I go to the gas station or a restaurant. So that's a big plus. So that's an important thing. What do you have to offer as a community? Do you have clarity on what your purpose is? Sometimes today it's called, what's your why? Why do you exist as Unity Center of Cedar Rapids? It's important you know that, because that needs to align with whatever the minister is looking for. So my why, I didn't know it was that, but I formulated in 1991. My purpose is to help people help themselves get happier, period. And keep it simple. Keep it easy to understand. Anybody else? Going once? Going twice? Going 3 times. Did you have something? Or
Nope, I was just going to.
Yeah, we're right at an hour and a
thank
half.
you
Isn't that
for-
amazing?
Thank you so much. We can always depend on you to offer a perspective that may not have been in our consciousness before. So
I hope so. And again,
yes.
I'm sorry or you're welcome. You get to decide.
Well, isn't that the beautiful thing about Unity is we allow for that. It's, you know, and we encourage that
Yes,
questioning.
not only
and
allow,
that
we encourage.
exploration. So, Just thank everybody for coming. We will be having more guest speakers as the year comes, those who come in person, we're encouraging them to have workshops. So seeing the great participation is
this is
wonderful,
wonderful.
because it just gives
No,
us such
thank
a new opportunity to experience all the beauty that Unity has to bring.
Yeah, and all the
Yeah.
different opinions.
Yeah.
Because the next person you have, you might go, well, Hasselbeck didn't say that. And they'll say, of course he didn't. He's Hasselbeck.
So, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.